So this is our very first Reincarnation book club. So I'm really excited that we're doing this, and I cannot tell you how many people have been sharing more things about, talking with authors about their books. And so it's early days, but I feel like it's going to be a really good event for us to have in between symposiums. And I met Barbara Marsh because of, Barbara Graham. Barbara Marsh is another friend of mine. I met Barbara Graham because of last year's symposium and our mutual friend Diane Seaman. And Barbara was very gracious to send some books, which we used as door prizes. So some people got those, and the feedback I've been getting has been absolutely awesome. And when I asked Barbara if she would be our speaker for the Reincarnation Book Club, she was on board. So here we are, and I have a feeling a few people will be joining us yet.
Okay.
So, but we'll go ahead and get started. And I just wanted to, in case you didn't read the bio in the book, this is not her first rodeo at writing. From magazine articles in major publications to a best-selling book, Eye of My Heart, 27 women writers reveal the hidden pleasures and perils of being a grandmother. That's a mouthful. And then your other book, Women Who Run with the Poodles. I love the title, Myths and Tips of Honoring Your Mood Swings. Wow. And then your memoir, Camp Paradox, that's got to have some really juicy tidbits in there. But now she's venturing into fiction. And I forgot to mention the Broadway play. I mean, the plays off Broadway and in theaters around the country. So you're multi-talented, Barbara, I have to say.
Thank you.
And I'm in awe of your talent. I'm a wannabe writer. I'm feeling better about it than I did when I first started writing, but it's an honor to have you here and to talk to us about what Jonah knew. So to get us in the mood, we thought it would be nice if Barbara would start by doing a reading. Yeah. So I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Carol. It's lovely. I'm glad to be your kickoff author. That's an honor, so I appreciate it. So I'm just going to read a section kind of from the middle of the book, after the scene where Jonah first they go to Helen's house and he recognizes her as his mom from the previous life. The dog, there's the love affair between him and the dog. And Lucy, and Helen faints, and Lucy is beside herself. This is so outside her realm of possibility, what could happen with her kid. So they're walking home, and Jonah says, "Are you, Mama?" "Am I what?" Lucy's head was spinning. On the walk back from Helen's, she was clutching Jonah's hand, sufficiently aware of their surroundings to keep them from getting mangled by an oncoming traffic, but that was all. What the hell? "Mama, are you?" "Am I what, Bear?" Lucy asked as they turned the corner toward the house. The air was so steamy and still, even the leaves on the sycamores appeared to be napping. "Mad at me?" "No, I'm not mad. Of course I'm not mad at you, Jonah, but I'm trying to understand what you said about how that was you in that picture and how Charlie used to be your dog and your name was Danny and Helen was your mom. Do I have that right?" Jonah was zigzagging back and forth across the driveway, kicking up little tornadoes of gravel along the way. Is that right? Lucy unlocked the front door, relieved to have made it home after the bizarre scene at Helen's, even though without air conditioning, their rental house turned into a steam bath in the heat. Yeah, I guess, mumbled Jonah. I could see that you and Charlie really liked each other, Lucy said, which is lovely, but that doesn't mean he used to be your dog, or that Helen was your mom, or that that was you in those photographs. Can I have some ice cream, Mama, please? I'm too hot. Okay. Lucy dug the rocky road out of the freezer and piled 2 generous scoops on a sugar cone, then sat down with Jonah at the kitchen table and watched him lick methodically from bottom to top to minimize drips. She wondered how it was possible to love someone as fiercely as she loved this boy, a boy who had grown from a speck to personhood inside her body, yet still be so mystified by him. She supposed that's what love is, the kind of surrender that surpasses all understanding. I'm gonna jump ahead. When Jonah finished his cone, Lucy gently wiped the goatee blooming on his chin with a paper napkin, then said, "So, can you tell me why you think Charlie used to be your dog and Helen your mom?" I tried to tell you, Mama, but you and Daddy always said I was making it up, like Jeremy, who pretends he's from Mars to get out of broccoli because they don't have vegetables on Mars. But I was not making it up. I'm sorry I didn't believe you, Bear. Jonah reached for Mancala, one of his favorite games, then took the blue and green glass beads from their nests in the board and began lining them up on the kitchen table. I told you there was a dog when we were at the bakery. You did, Lucy said, took a breath. So, do you think Helen was the mom you talked about when you were little and Charlie was your dog and you lived with them in the house above the bakery? Yeah, only the house was yellow but not blue like now. Jonah snuck a glance at Lucy that didn't meet her gaze. Can you tell me anything more about that time? Jonah shrugged, then started rearranging the beads into a snake. It was before I was me, Jonah. I got killed in the head, and when I was up in the sky, I picked you to be my mama and Daddy to be my daddy. You looked so nice, and I could tell you really, really wanted me. I'll stop there.
Wow. Wow. Goosebumps.
Mariana, my friend. Hi.
Wow.
I could really see that as a movie.
Oh, that was the first thing I said to Barbara after I finished reading it. Oh, this would make such a good movie. And your way with words, oh my goodness. So, I mean, I could just put myself right in that scene, couldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So tell us what, after writing these other things that you have written, what on earth inspired you to write this book? Because I know you did a bunch of research about reincarnation because it's very authentically written. You know, those scenes that you were describing where the child goes back and forth between being a child and blurting out these memories, that is so real. I'm working on a case right now. Talking with these kids for 2 hours, they did this over and over and over again, and yet the stuff that came out of their mouths, mind-blowing. So
Yeah.
tell us what inspired you.
Okay, so many years ago, I was living in New York City, and I I was, among other things, I was writing plays, and I was also working as a freelance journalist for magazines, but mostly writing about psychology, memory, health, spirituality. And I was a contributing editor at Self magazine, and they asked me to do a story on past life regression therapy. So I signed up for a workshop with Roger Woolger, who was so well known and wonderful Jungian analyst, and who had written a book called Other Lives, Other Selves. I went to a workshop that Roger was doing on the Upper West Side of New York, and he did the, kind of relaxation and then guided meditation back to another time. There were about 30 of us maybe in this workshop. It was in a church basement. It was a very cold day in February, and everyone around me was having major experiences. I had absolutely nothing. I felt like a complete failure as a hypnotic subject. So, but it was kind of funny, but truly nothing opened up for me. So I then went, but I had to write this magazine story, and I was certainly open to the idea of reincarnation. I always had been, but anyway, so I went up to Roger's home in New Paltz, New York, took the bus up from the city because to have a private session because I needed something to write, and obviously I'd had zero experience. And I walked in and I said, Roger, I'm sorry, but I have to apologize in advance. I will probably be your first hypnotic failure. So sorry, but what can I do? And he was very kind and said, no worries. And I lay down on the sofa in his office, and he also, once again, did the same kind of guided meditation, only this time within, I don't know, all I knew was almost immediately I had a vision of a woman I took to be myself, um, who was in a pile of bodies living on the back of a very large flatbed truck during the Holocaust. And then we were thrown into a trench and killed. And this was devastating. I mean, I lay there sobbing for a very long time, because it was truly devastating, and yet it made a kind of sense to me because I'd always been obsessed with the Holocaust from when I was a very, very young child. I'd read every book, I'd had dreams that seemed to line up with it. There was a certain sense to it, but it was also quite disturbing and cathartic, and it felt true. A few days later, I went to see my own therapist at the time, Mark Epstein, who's a very well-known Buddhist psychiatrist. Some of you may know him. And expecting Mark to say, have me explore the symbolism of this. And instead of that, he handed me Ian Stevenson's book, 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation. And that blew me away. I took the book home and read it, and it just was extraordinary. And at about the same time, I was hearing a lot of Tibetan Buddhist teachers speaking in New York, including the Dalai Lama and other Rinpoches, and they talk about past and future lives like we might talk about, the next Lunar New Year or last Thanksgiving. So it was, and so all of this kind of was swimming in my mind. And then one day walking down the street in New York, I had the idea for the book. I knew I had to write this book. I didn't quite know how I was going to do it, and it took me a long time, but this book was given to me. this story was given to me, and really to write it in a way in which someone who has no real belief, or it's just not inside their conscious awareness, reincarnation and any of that, that the story would occur to this New York City couple would have this child, and the father's a doctor and believes very much in that our lives are bookended by birth and death and the senses, and so and it just kind of took off from there, though it took me a long time.
It is a process, isn't it?
It sure is.
And I'm glad you honored the time that it took you to process this story, because I think that's what adds to the authenticity of the story. I've read other reincarnation, not what is it, like historical fictions or novels,
Yeah.
and they didn't anywhere come close to the depth of authenticity that yours did.
Thank you.
And all too often they try to sensationalize the stories to maybe grab that movie producer. But to me, the way you unfolded this human, and not just one humans, but several human stories that were interconnected, which is the way life is anyway, it was masterful.
Thank you. Thank you. It took me quite a while I knew where the book was going. I read all of Stevenson's research about these kids, which completely inspired me. And I had the thought, because I didn't see it in any of the research, what if, but because so many of these kids died with these memories, and it makes sense, died young, violently, suddenly, their lives were just chopped off at the knees. So I said, well, what would happen if a child with these memories who had been murdered ran into the murderer, and yet the murderer had never been, caught? And the body had never been found, the murder. So that was kind of my starting point in a way. And then I had to figure out how to get there.
Fantastic. Well, you did a great job about it. And I want
Children.
hold on, let me bring it to you.
I was just wondering, you're so comfortable with both the little girl and the little boy and their little battles between each other. You must have children or grandchildren that were very poetically charged.
I have a son who's an adult and the father of two daughters. And his younger daughter was Azalea, was a great inspiration for Lola. Azalea announced at a very early age that she was a mermaid, and she would be joining her pod at age 16, and fully believing, and I think she's now 13, but she still kind of does. So I've spent a lot of time around these two girls, as well as the mother of a son, and it was just so lovely and fun to be able to tap back into that time and be able to write these kids.
I got a real big kick out of their
Oh,
little
good.
arguments.
I love them. I love how they fight with each other. I love that Jonah calls Lola his frenemy, which he learned from his mother, and she bosses him around, but then he kind of, he just loves fighting with her. There's something about them that was just fun to write. There were pieces, I mean, it's a pretty intense story, and there's a lot of grief and sorrow. So I really looked for the places where it could be fun too.
Yeah, I thought you did an excellent job with Lola's trying to figure out at the end, she fights with this other little boy and then they have this combat. Yet she's beginning to realize he may possibly be her father.
Right.
And that had to really knock her socks off.
Right. And yeah, and that she's his daughter, and that there's this bond, there's an instant bond and connection between them that is lovely, in spite of their, feistiness with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good, really good.
Would you repeat that question that you had before we got live about the ending?
Oh, the ending. Okay, so we can go on. All right. Well, when I was reading the book and I had some time to really think about the characters and how the relationships between Lola and Jonah were, and there was this competition between the two of them. And at the end, I realized, I read the page a couple of times, where is Jonah and his mom and his dad? Why aren't they on the trail too? So that's was my question.
Yeah.
Of you could have done the ending in different ways.
I could have, and to me, it felt, for Jonah, there was a completion. The scene with Helen when he's, she's holding him in her arms at the grave site, and time collapses, and she really is, in those few moments, his mother again.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a kind of completion that happens in that scene where he tells her this is where he died, and he's really sorry, he didn't want to leave her and all of that. And I think there is a completion for him in that, and a completion for the two of them. And then I won't say closure, because I really hate the word closure in general, but then when his parents arrive and he's being held by Helen, but then he sees his mom and he just leaps into his mother's arms. And to me, that was, he was done with that life, with that other life. And that's true of these kids. I mean, in the research, the memories tend to fade by the time the kids are 7 or 8. And they move into the present lifetime. So I felt that, though, as I told you before, it could have been written that Jonah came along with them, Jonah and his parents, up the mountain to bury Henry, Danny's ashes. It could have been written that way, but I felt that Jonah had his completion, and for that family, that was their completion. That stage of it. I think there's stages, of course, and it's not ever completely over, but the piece, that a certain piece of it was.
I had another question too, if you don't mind.
Please.
Okay. Ever a few chapters, you would have this page in italics, and it was the soul of Danny Henry talking about being in Bardo and being gone. And could you, and I was so relieved to get that first page, because I was wondering about him. What was his soul thinking? And
Great question.
and how did you come up with that great idea?
Interestingly, in the writing of it, I wrote the last one first. The scene where, at the graveside, where Helen is almost being pulled on top of the grave and can't let go. And he reflects that he had to hang around in order to let her know, so she could let Mira and Lola know that he was that he was okay and that he was gone but not lost to them. And so I wrote that first, and I don't know where it came from, and that's sort of the magic of writing. For me, this book, that stuff just came in. And then I realized as I was, I did many drafts of this book, as I was working through it again, that we needed the whole trajectory from his, being picked up by Jackson and his death to his, hanging out in the bardo and not, wanting to move on and not being able to. And, I did a little bit of research about how different cultures view when a child dies, how rituals that the parents have. And it just felt really natural and right. But again, these are sections I don't know where they came from. I did. I was somewhat inspired in describing his death. I read a lot about how the senses shut down. That first eyes, and then hearing, and so on. And I read an incredible book by Mingyur Rinpoche called "In Love with the World," which is just an exceptional book, where he almost died and he gave very graphic descriptions of the process of dying. But he did not die ultimately. So that was inspiring and helpful. But I've read about the bardos for many years. So in Tibetan Buddhism, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, and so on.
As you were talking about this, though, I was covered with goosebumps. I don't know if anyone else was feeling that. And it made me wonder if somehow you tapped into somebody's story out of the collective consciousness.
Maybe. If I did, I don't know. I don't know whose.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter, because the lessons that you revealed in the story were really wonderful. And then to go back to the previous question, I feel like because these characters were very new to this concept, and that was masterful, to be able to take these newbies, take them through this story. So how you ended it was very appropriate to where they were. If they had been more seasoned experiencers, that would have been a different ending.
Mm-hmm.
But I think because of where they were in their life, that's part of what makes it so doggone real. That that was so appropriate for where they were.
Yeah, thank you. And it was very deliberate also on my part, really, to have characters for whom this was unfamiliar. So then I could explore, and the reader could explore with them, what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did when you had your session with Roger Wolger, did that help you with the process of revealing this story?
Not specifically so much this story, but my own experience really kind of solidified my sense of the possibility of that we carry traces of consciousness from one lifetime into the next. It really, and then reading Ian Stevenson's work after that kind of really drove that home. So, yeah.
Beautiful. And I believe you also spoke with other people. Oh, I see. Wait a minute. Mariana, you have a question? Unmute yourself and.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that is so mysterious to me is that reading the book, and that I love that book, and that it slowly kind of and unfolds that this little boy is actually in reality an incarnation. I mean, he has information that he could not in any way have symbolized or dreamt about or imagined, that it was a reality. And then, of course, in the book, it becomes a reality, which is really very special. And I just wonder what are the theories about, having past life regression, which I've done, and it feels very real, and to symbolically to establish some issues in my life, and imaginations and dreams. So all these other processes that reveal information to us about our wholeness and our psyche. But what is that link or that jump into where a child has reality information that can be shown and proven? I don't know.
I'll let Carol take this one.
So one of the reasons why I'm a regression therapist and also reincarnation researcher, Mariana.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things that we have observed over and over again is that young children are untainted by, ordinary, the world, the mundane world.
Yeah.
So they're more open.
Mhm.
And then, like Barbara said, particularly if they've had traumatic deaths in their previous lifetime, and this is what happened to me also. So this is another reason why I got into this field, because I was not blessed, even though my father was Buddhist.
Uh-huh.
He when I was beginning to have memories as a child, I had no support whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so I carried all of those angst, those wounds, if you will, like anchors, holding around my ankles, holding me back from life.
Mhm.
And so I had a moment similar to what Barbara had, where I realized, oh, that's where that was coming from.
Mhm.
And it's so real. But these children, unfiltered, it just flows through them. So now you reverse engineer that. If we as adults can move our ego and all of that stuff that we've been conditioned to believe over to the side a little bit, we can, I was raised Christian on my mom's side. And so, we can be like children.
Mhm.
And be open to connect with that. I feel the more I journey, the more I witness these things, I feel like it is our soul that is connecting to us. And
Yeah.
so it's a different language than, the way we're talking now. It's visceral, it's emotional, it's in pictures, and for me, movies that I have to have this like movie going through my head periodically when I'm having memories of something. And so, but we're not conditioned to think about that our soul could have a language with us.
Mhm.
So that's why I say I feel like Barbara tapped into that space when you do that, and that's how I connect with collective consciousness or with another entity. I'm also a medium, so when I connect with another person, it's from soul to soul. When I connect with a past life, it's soul to soul, or there's, this whole realm where you connect with the collective consciousness. And then there's a whole nother realm way beyond all of that. And Judy and Pat have both been in my classes or have had sessions, so they can tell you that once you have the experience, and it sounds like you've had a regression.
I did.
So once you've had the experience, now it's like you've opened the door. And, or like I like to say, you can't unring the bell.
Mhm.
You can't unexperience that. Once you've had that experience, you cannot unring the bell. And this is what I love about beautiful books like Barbara's. It gives you the experience vicariously, and say you're not ready to have the experience, but you can vicariously go right into the experience and be, crack that door open ever so much. And so I hope that answers your question.
No, it does, because I have had some very early pre-verbal experiences that I can still feel and re-experience that are, but I think they actually happen in my lifetime and not in former lifetimes. And so it's interesting that to connect with, generational experiences.
Yeah, exactly. And this is one of the differences in Barbara talking with this group, because we are focused on reincarnation, we are focused on spiritual growth. And so we can say things and talk about things in a different way of a general audience. And we can have a little bit deeper conversation. So thank you for sharing that, Mariana. That was lovely. And please feel free to share more. And Judy.
I'd like to know more about you and who you are and everybody.
Okay.
Well, my I don't know if it's much of a question, but when I read the book, my son is 33 now, but when he was young, reading about Jonah and his issues with the firecrackers and the noise and all of that, brought back memories of my son and his night terrors and some other things that I had forgotten had happened. And my son has struggled through life with being a part of this normal world. He doesn't fit in. And I'm wondering if there's other lives that are so strong in him that keep him from being able to be all in this world. He has social anxiety, depression. He struggles. He just struggles on a daily basis. And Barbara's book was very close to home for me, and I really appreciate that, to help me, because I've been trying to help my son, all these years, that it's just, can they still have those issues, and not because he didn't talk about any other lives when he was younger, but he had problems. So I guess I don't know how. I know he's probably had other lives that were very traumatic, but do they stuff them in and not realize what's going on?
Well, Carol can answer too, but my own sense is, that a lot of kids, probably way more than are ever recognized, carry and some residual traces of former lifetimes that may show up in many different ways that are not necessarily expressed verbally. That would be, I mean, Carol, my hunch. And I was wondering when, Judy, when you were talking, if your son had ever done any work with Carol or on past lives.
He has not, he's hard to approach on this topic. A lot of topics, basically. So I have not, he was not verbally expressing any other lives when he was younger,
Mhm.
but he had to have a backpack filled with supplies just in case something happened.
Uh-huh.
And this was, elementary school.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I let him do that, but I didn't know why he felt he needed to do that. So I thought, well, it's just something he read or heard about or discussed in school or,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
it's, if I knew now or then what I know now, would his life been so much different, but I would love him to see Carol.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are imprints that are just probably unexpressed, and that influence a child and adult's life, and that are not known, but that there are imprints there would be. I mean, if we take it to be true, which I do, that we live successive lifetimes, and then, then I imagine that there are those kind of sticky imprints that in some lifetimes just don't get explored.
Like you mentioned that you loved or were gravitated to the things about the Holocaust, and in my lifetime, I can't say that I gravitated to things about the Holocaust, but I gravitated to Jewish people
Hmm.
big time. And I was, Buddhist on one side and Baptist on the other. I wasn't really around many Jewish people, but when I was, I felt very much at home.
Hmm.
And like you say, the imprints, if this is one of the other things about the book, you show rather than just tell how those imprints are manifesting.
Hmm.
And gosh, we're still learning a lot as regression therapists. We're still learning a lot about how those things happen, and we call the imprints bleed over. For instance, like when your son showed the fear of the firecrackers, that the energy from that other lifetime bled over onto the energy of this lifetime, and so strongly that it affected what he was experiencing in this lifetime. And very often you'll see when that happens, the knee-jerk reaction is to operate from the previous lifetime. So
because I knew like Jonah didn't like the firecrackers because Danny got shot. And so I guess I was relating, when my son didn't like fireworks, I'm thinking it's fireworks because I didn't know then
exactly
what I know now. And I'm like, what coulda, woulda, shoulda, but it's just, for me, it's very eye-opening. I mean, this book has been beautiful, but eye-opening in my own personal life, which has been fabulous, to help me and hopefully get my son to see Carol. me and my son Carol.
And Judy, you may not have been able, even if you had that sense of his fears, I hope you don't hold yourself responsible, because you may not have been able to make and do anything, make and have the outcome be any different.
And I agree with you, because I have been working on my own life and my past lives and my trauma, and have had to forgive myself for so much that, I know I did the best I could for him, when he was young, and I'm still doing the best for him now that he's an adult, because he still lives at home.
Yeah.
So, I just want my life, and I would like his life. I would like him to have a happy life.
Of course.
And, I'm just gonna keep trying and exploring different ways, so.
And I mean, there's also an inherited family trauma, which I write about in the book. It turns out not to be what drives Jonah, but for a while Lucy thinks it is, and I think it's definitely has an effect on her. There's an imprint of inherited family trauma in her life, and I think there's probably times and places and people where there's a confluence of both.
Mhm.
That is a great point, and I'm glad you interjected that in the story, other possibilities, and actually, that could be a sequel going into something with that kind of storyline, and it's something that we're learning so much about. The shamans have dealt with that for thousands of years, but only now are we in the Western culture really looking at that seriously, and it's a very real thing.
It is a very real thing. And
I-
people who are a little wary of reincarnation or can be very accepting of inherited family trauma because there's a genetic biological piece to it. Whereas with reincarnation, there's not so much. You don't get the gene. You can't go in a lab and do genetic testing and demonstrate it.
Yeah, very true.
But you can feel it.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Carol, Mariana, do you have any other questions?
I have something.
Okay.
that
Hold on
just-
1 second. Pat has a question.
Well, in listening to Judy, when she was talking about her son and his night terrors and loud noises and so forth, all of a sudden my mind went back to World War I, the other world wars. And a friend of mine has a very vivid memories of World War I. And there was a lot of explosion, a lot of deaths.
Yeah.
And then we're on television every day. We're watching what's happening to the Ukrainians.
Mhm.
Can you imagine what their next lives are going to be like?
Yes, no.
The trauma,
Yeah.
and the brutality.
Yeah.
So, as a human race, we're really good at hurting each other,
Yes.
and we just carry that on from one generation to the other, as well as in your own personal past life.
Yeah.
When I was in Alaska this summer, this thing is very alive in many of the tribes up there. They follow their own genetic pools, and they call themselves tribes, not tribes, but clans. And I got to know some people of the Tlingit Indian. No, you can't call them Indian. First persons, and they had two dominant ones. One was Raven, the Raven clan, and the other one was Eagle clan, and they seemed to always be at war with one another. And when we were on the ship, we had going with us one of the female shamans who talked to us about every bit of their culture, and it was very much this tradition for the decades going on and on and on, but in a more primitive or in indigenous environment, it's even stronger. They live by it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the way it is. It's always been that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, does anyone else have any other questions?
I have a question for you, Carol, as a medium, completely off my book. So I've been reading a really interesting book called The Light Between Us by a medium named Laura Lynn Jackson. I don't know if you know of her book. It's quite compelling. And she's very tuned into the other side, as she calls it. And what what always puzzles me is, so, and she sees the deceased relatives of her people she works with, and they bring messages, and they're assure their loved ones that they're still with them and all of that. How do you understand that that the spirit is somehow both intact and yet also moves on? I try to think about the mechanics of that, because do these spirits remain as they were for long, forever and all? I don't know. Maybe you have some thoughts about that.
That's a really deep question. And actually I'm writing about that in my next book. So many people think of reincarnating as this fixed, we go into human mode. We think of this fixed entity passing over and then, reincarnated into another fixed entity, as if they are somehow carrying human form,
Right.
human energy. The way I see it is, what they're really carrying is a stream of consciousness. Now, to answer your question, thinking in human terms, we think, well, how can one person be here and yet, to the light? How can that possibly be? I'll tell you, because it's close to Chinese New Year's, I'll tell you a Chinese story. In the Chinese culture, you have the place where a person is buried, and they believe that a certain percentage of the deceased soul resides at that cemetery, but another percentage of the deceased resides in what we call a tablet. A tablet is really just a stick with a person's name on it, and that's placed in the family altar or the temple altar for the family. So another percentage resides there, and another percentage goes to the bardo. So that's the Chinese way of believing. And yet, again, how does that even happen? But here's the thing: we've got to get out of that human mind, and we've got to think more like God, or the creator, supreme being, whatever you want to call it. And in that sense, we are all sparks of the divine. How can that possibly be? But we are not confined by these bodies in our divineness. And so energy, and when we have a journey, as those of you who have had journeys, we realize, wait a minute, we are more than these physical bodies. What is that that's having that experience? And that same thing that's having both the physical body experience and this journeying experience is just an aspect of our soul energy, our divine energy, however you want to call it. Does that answer that question?
Yeah. Yes, we're not a fixed entity. And I tried to write that into the book, that
Good luck.
well, that it's, and the Rinpoche talks about that it's
Yeah,
that it's not like you go from, actually Jim Tucker, who's Ian Stevenson's
yeah, I know Jim.
successor, put it, you don't go from being John Doe to Joe Blow.
That's right. And but a lot of people, that's what that's where their mind goes.
Get
That's what
stuck there.
happens.
Yeah.
And you know, in the Buddhist culture, they don't believe in a soul the way that Hindus and other cultures believe in the soul. They believe in what's called an anatta, or some people translate that as no
self.
soul.
Right.
But I like how this one person writes about it, describes it as beyond being. And that has been my experience, that when I'm in soul energy, I am beyond being. I'm formless, I'm pure energy. It's just like I could reach out and touch so many different things. It's such an amazing experience. And that's why I love doing, you know, everything that I'm doing right now is to be able to give people glimpses of that, or even better yet, the experience itself.
Talk about remote viewing. Isn't that part of it? When you're able to remote view, you're out of your body, you're out there in space, you're jumping from one place to another, and carrying your mind, but you're also interacting with folks that don't even know you're there. Yeah.
And it's not a linear timeline like we have
No.
now, but
Yeah.
you can be here now, but also somewhere else.
Yes.
The-
Yeah.
The time doesn't matter.
Yes, so many ways to get out of these fixed bodies, these fixed concepts. Remote viewing, regression therapy, developing mediumship skills, developing your I call it PSI, intuitive skills. I do a form called psychometry, where I can hold an object and it's like I'm gone. So many ways to develop that. And I feel like there is such a growing interest in that. When I started 30 years ago, it was all woo-woo. You know, people thought you were nuts. And now look how mainstream it is becoming. It's not completely there yet, but it is becoming more and more mainstream. And we've got scientists that are you know, figuring this out as well. I love what Rupert Sheldrake's work about morphogenetic fields. It's the same stuff we're talking about. And Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton, they're really talking about how all of this energetic stuff is affecting our physical bodies as well. I'm interested in the mind, because I know the mind is the part that creates all the physical stuff.
Right.
So that's
sort of the big argument between, you know, conventional science, is that matter, that consciousness is contained in matter versus
that's right.
matter is held in consciousness.
That's right. And they're finding more and more people finding out that no, that's not the case. And we did a Karma Cafe last month where or was it? Yeah, no, this month, right? Yeah, this is January, right? I don't even know what year I'm in yet. Time is just moving so fast. And we did a Karma Cafe, and that was the topic. What is consciousness? And the conversation was really fascinating. Then it sparked more questions. So we'll cover those in future Karma Cafes. But yeah, to be able to have all of these conversations, and look, you had to expand your consciousness to be able to even tackle this book, What Jonah Knew, and look how amazing it has. I feel like it's just the tip of the iceberg for you. And don't you have another project in the wings?
It's
That's
information.
Yeah.
Information also, you know, about consciousness that will. I'm really interested in death. So yeah,
That's
it's
my forte.
investigation, but also in consciousness through the eyes and experience of ordinary people.
Where are you located? That you
I'm in
have
California. I'm in the Bay Area, Northern California.
Okay, and how about you, Carol? Where are you?
Richmond, Virginia, but I'm originally from the Bay Area.
Oh, okay. Well, Virginia's not too far from me. I've been involved in death and dying and afterlife, and since my daughter died in 1995, and back then you couldn't find any books hardly at all in bookstores regarding death and dying. Raymond Moody was like one of the only ones that were
Yeah.
anything, and now there's a million of them. I'm so glad that people did start writing things. I mean, consciousness is the only thing that makes sense to me at this point. The science part of it is just, no, doesn't resonate anymore at all. And I go by how I feel, what really feels right and resonates with my beliefs. And, you know, I know there's reincarnation. I just feel it, that there definitely is. I spent almost my whole life not wanting to wear a uniform of any kind. Girl Scout, I wouldn't work where I had to wear a uniform, and I've never had a regression to find out, but it's got to be bad back past life. I can't imagine what else could be. And to this day, I would not wear a uniform. So strange, but
No, that's what I call a tell. That Barbara went when she had her private session with Roger Wilger. Roger does a technique called deep memory process. We could take that statement that you said, I do not want to wear a uniform, don't make me wear a uniform. We could use that in the deep memory process technique and use that as a bridge to go to where you felt that. And Judy, I did a class on reincarnation in November after the symposium, and I was explaining about the deep memory process. So we had a group regression, and something happened for Judy, and I could tell she started getting emotional, and as she was revealing what her story had been. And I said, I kept hearing that guidance, go into it now. And we did. And it was cathartic. It was so, and I mean, she's doing this in front of everybody, but it was really, really powerful. And all that to say is that she was ready. And I, even though I am passionate about regression therapy, I also know that you don't push the river. If a person is not ready, then just wait. When they're ready, when it's time for them to do it, they will find you, whatever the regression therapist. Or it may come up spontaneously on its own. That was what was happening for me when I began, was I was having spontaneous memories. And I actually went to a Brian Weiss workshop, and I did what you did, Barbara. I froze. I actually started having an experience, but I freaked out so badly in the experience that I popped myself right out of it and froze. And the weird thing was, 20 years later, I decided to do a training with Brian Weiss. And, so it's a week-long thing. And in one of the practice sessions where I was a subject, and this was a person who, she had way less experience than I had at doing regressions, but the timing was perfect. I went right back to that experience at that very first workshop 20 years earlier. You can't make this stuff up. It's crazy, but crazy good, I think.
I just want to say thank you so much to everybody. It's been really inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank
Good
you
to
so
see
much.
you.
I have a lot of things to think about. Appreciate it.
Yes, yes. And I think if there are no other questions, Barbara was going to share one more reading. And so I'll turn it back over to you, Barbara.
Okay. So this is a scene between Lucy, Jonah's mom, and did Carol leave too?
Oh,
No, she's here.
no, the other
Oh,
Carol.
the other girl. Okay.
Yeah, she popped out.
She popped out. Sure.
She didn't have to, but she did.
This is a scene between Lucy and the Rinpoche, where Lucy's still trying to figure out what is going on with Jonah. She says, "You think Jonah might really be the reincarnation of Helen's son? She doesn't even know if he's alive or dead, just that he disappeared." I'm saying that yes, if he has passed away, it's possible your son carries memory traces that arose from his consciousness. But to be clear, your son is not Helen's son reborn. There's a world of difference. Jonah is his own person with his own individual karma. I get that your religion teaches about karma and reincarnation, but in my religion, Judaism, the emphasis is on leading an ethical life, doing good here and now, and not worrying about what happens later. That's excellent advice. Ethical behavior in the present lifetime leads to a favorable rebirth. So you see, we're all on the same page. Yes, but I'm used to putting my faith in science, Lucy said. So is Jonah's father, who's a doctor. Controlled studies and all that. There's no way to prove that when the body dies, anything is left over. Inherited trauma makes sense because it's based in biology, genes that get passed down. But rebirth? How can you even prove it exists? You're 100% correct. Rebirth has yet to be established in scientific trials. But perhaps that's only because science has yet to catch up with what the Buddha realized over 2,500 years ago. And that is that everyone has had countless rebirths. Because of this, sages advise treating every human being with the same loving kindness you would show your own mother. Some even say that every other person might have been your mother during a previous incarnation, so you better be nice, he chuckled. Then his expression becoming more solemn, he added, Western psychology is quite good at identifying many causes and conditions of suffering, but it fails to look beyond the circumstances of the present lifetime. However, there are occasions when a bigger perspective could help get at the root of a problem. Do you understand? If she were being perfectly honest, Lucy would have to admit she really didn't want to understand. She liked it better before, when she didn't have to think about any of this, when Jonah was just her son, hers and Matt's, not some floating cloud of fairy dust that settled into body after body, lifetime after lifetime. As if he were scanning her mind, Jampa said, Please don't misunderstand me, my dear. Your son is your son. He came to life inside your body. He carries your DNA and your husband's. He's your child and will be until the day he dies. But like everyone else, there is also the consciousness he brought with him into the present lifetime. Consciousness that did not originate in your womb. What matters is that he was drawn to you and your husband like a magnet because you offered the best possible conditions for his growth. He smiled. That is very good news because it works both ways. Your son came into your life to offer you a precious opportunity for your own growth too. And that is a great blessing.
Oh, I love it, love it, love
Yes.
it.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
What a
Mm.
perfect way to end the evening. That was like frosting on the cake. Oh, my gosh.
Can I ask this another
Yes,
question?
yes.
Sure.
Uh, Carol brought up sequel, or, yeah. You're, as I was reading it, and I go into a trance just listening, and I was really into the dynamics of this family. And I said, wow, I could see this as a television series. Where you could take each hour once a week and you delve into all the nuances. That's even better than a movie.
From your mouth to God's ears, as my mother would say.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
do. There is a film agent who's interested in it, who also would like to see it as a series and who's shopping it around. But who knows? It could happen. It could take 10 years. It could never happen. The film business, whether TV or movies, is so fickle. And, I'm not holding my breath, but it would be lovely if it happens. And I think it lends itself very well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
All in divine order, right?
Exactly. I'm
You know-
I'm not attached. If it happens, I would love it, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Did you see or watch Regular Joe? It was a TV series. It only made one season.
No, I don't
But-
know about it.
You need to look it up, because this
Regular Joe.
Regular
Okay.
Joe, it was one man who had 3 different scenarios of his life.
Oh,
And in this one hour, they would move from this scenario to this scenario. And he had his wife was his wife in this life, in this scenario, or
Yeah.
alternate reality, or she was maybe his girlfriend in another, or
oh,
his
interesting.
enemy in a third. Well, it was so good, but there was times in which I got lost of which one he was in.
Oh, interesting.
And that's what killed the series, because it was too much concentration. They didn't make a difference in the way he looked, or the women in his life looked.
Oh,
They had to change, should have
Yeah.
changed it more, and it would have worked, I think.
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, interesting.
Well, the movie that did make that work, which is getting lots and lots of awards, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. If you haven't seen it, definitely see it. Oh, I am so proud of them for getting all the awards that they're getting. So,
I've not seen it yet, and
oh,
plan
it's-
to. Yeah, I
it
know
is,
about it.
it is hysterical, the way they put it all together, but definitely a must see.
Good.
Michelle Yeoh, and I can't pronounce the guy who won Best Supporting Actor. I can't pronounce his name. And Jamie, drawing a blank here. She won Best Supporting Actress, and so it's
Oh, great.
Curtis?
Jamie Curtis, yeah,
Oh, okay.
Jamie Curtis.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Cool.
getting a lot of good buzz.
Where do you see
Yeah,
it?
it is.
Is it still shown at the movie theaters?
No, you can downstream,
It's
stream, it.
it's available.
Yeah,
To
Stream,
stream on
yeah.
Netflix.
or something, I don't know. I have to look
Mhm.
that up. Well, let's wrap up, and I just want to thank Barbara again for taking your time, sharing the backstory to your story. That is always so meaningful to me, and you can tell by the questions, our group really loved it. And I just want to let you know, we're going to try to do this on a monthly basis, and already have 3 more people lined up. Next month will be Bruce Kalowski. He's known as the hypnotist for the stars.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good.
He's in LA, as you can imagine, that area. And so I'll be posting that in the very near future. I think we decided on February the 15th, but I'll post that. So, and he is he's takes it from a different point of view, where he is a therapist, and he shares several cases that he has worked on, including Glenn Ford was one of his clients, and the lives that Glenn Ford remembered. So it
Cool.
should be very interesting. We're going to be talking a lot about reincarnation.
Right.
And
Okay.
great karma that you have created tonight and with your book. Thank you so much, Barbara. And
Thank you,
look forward to
Carol.
seeing you in October. And